Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was May 9th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Multcara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violant de Bar. Let's begin today's document. I'm going to start out today's episode by checking in about the artificial intelligence and its quality, because goodness gracious, the output from my agentic AI OpenClaw pipeline for this particular document, it was just like utterly useless. And remember that register 1819, which is where today's document is coming from, was the very first one that I put through the OpenClaw pipeline, and it skipped Gemini. So Gemini does seem to be better at the initial handwritten text recognition, and so just having it go through Claude alone can result in not exactly the best. Sometimes it works out okay, but this registers output from OpenClaw. I'm not sure if it's going to be much use at all, other than just some lucky hits when doing a full text search. But today's document was especially challenging for the agentic AI that worked with Claude alone, because it starts on the very bottom of folio 98V, and there's about 2 lines there, and then at the top of 99R there's only about 5 lines. And so basically, with so little content, it's hard for the pattern recognition to kick in and help out with when the paleography gets difficult. So I was basically on my own with this one, and I thought, well, maybe I could just do a little, old method of going first to Gemini, then to Claude. But then I was like, you know what, let's just see what I can do. And it turns out that my understanding of Catalan and the paleography of this document got me to the point where I feel pretty confident that I know what's going on. And so I just kind of did a little bit of Google Translate for some tough parts and some words that I wasn't sure of. And I was able, I think, to get it. And I also went to the Dictionary Català Valencia Balear and found some historical uses of a couple words in this document. And I think what was also helpful was that the person who this document is addressed to actually had a letter that was sent to him earlier in the year that was actually the subject of the episode in the podcast from February 26th. So I could kind of piece together some things. So that's the report about how useful AI was for this document, which was not too useful at all. But I certainly benefit from the way that I used AI back on February 26th. I think I did. And so my analysis that I did on February 26th got me a long way to understanding what's happening with today's document. So the addressee for today's document is Berenguer de Ulmis, or Olms, if you're taking that out of Latin. And I knew I had seen that name before, and I just wasn't quite sure where, so I just did a search of my previous episodes and found the February 26th episode. The February 26th document was from this same register, 1819, and it was addressed not only to Berenguer de Olms, but also to Jacme Quinta. And that document was all about collecting taxes in Catalonia. So the amount that was in the unit of currency that was in that document was dinars. So at the time, I was kind of wondering, why is such care being taken for collecting money in the smallest unit of currency? That was one of the big questions that I had. And maybe that goes into some of what has happened with the situation as revealed by today's document. But basically, on February 26th, Violant wrote to Berenguer d'Olms and Jacme Quinta and said, Jacme is working for the treasury and he's going to go collect taxes, and Knight Berengario d'Olms, please go with him. So I inferred that Berengario d'Olms was going to be the muscle, that he was going to go along with this tax collector around Catalonia and ensure that everybody paid up. So that's where we left off on February 26th. And now it's May 9th, a bit of a little over a month later, and we've got this letter from Violant to Berengario d'Olms, and it starts out in a way that I've learned to recognize is not good if you're receiving the letter, because it starts out, Mosen Berengario, molt nos maraveam. We are astonished. And that's never a good kind of astonishment. So I've learned that if you see that word, we are astonished, maraveam, it's not like, what a happy surprise. It's instead like, I can't believe I have to even be writing this. It's really a displeasure kind of astonishment. So then the next phrase, again, kind of gets in that. A no sense raho com tan flacamont vos havets en los affairs. So then this next one is, there's no reason, it is without reason that you have such weakness in the business, in the affairs that we had asked you to do. That's the next line, the part about we had asked you to do. So the report has gotten back to Violant that the knight Berengario d'Olms, he has been doing a very poor job. And the word flacamont, I looked up in the Dictionary Català Valencia Balear, and it comes up as weakness. And so, yeah, I mean, there's not really any other way to interpret that. So, indeed, Violant is saying, hey, knight Berengario d'Olms, you have been doing a very bad job. And so it seems to me like it has to be about the commission that was given to this knight on February 26th. It would surprise me if that job had completed and he had then been assigned another job all within the space of a month. I mean, it is possible, but my guess is that we're still talking about the job that Berengario d'Olms was supposed to be doing with Jacme Quinta, going around Catalonia collecting taxes in the unit of dinars. So apparently Berengario Dolms has not been doing a good job of this, but instead of getting into threatening language like what was used by Joan to express his frustration with the governor of Aragon, and he's used it a couple times with some other people too, where he says things like, I'm going to make an example of you. And then Violant gets into some of this disappointment language that gets more severe in other cases, like when she wrote to the governor of Aragon. But in this letter, it's almost like she's being polite on a certain level, because the way the letter ends is that she says, you might be busy with other things and just let me know. But I feel like there's sort of like a bit of irony happening here. Like, she really says it in a couple different sentences, and I know that they repeat things just, as a way, a style that is expected to just kind of say things in more than one way. But I also get the feeling like she's really almost like doing a little like guilt trip on him, or like saying like, are you sure you want to be ignoring the job that I gave you? Are you really that busy? But I mean, the way she ends the letter is sots occupat d'altres affaires a nos mes, oh, and then what is that? Tequants certificats nos per vostra letra car procuriarium de deputar ha altre persona. Meaning, if you're busy, let me know, and I'll give the job to someone else. So, I think she's just trying to, like, figure out, like, is he actually going to do this? I don't know. It just seems really passive aggressive to me. So I'm trying to figure out like if she is trying to be gentle with Berengario Dolms, or if she is like being ironic here. Like, it's a little weird. Or is it earnest? Is like she literally wondering, is this knight too busy with other things so that he can't do this job? Like, is she literally trying to figure it out if he's too busy? I'm not sure. It's difficult for me to understand how someone would write back to this letter and say, dear sovereign, like queen of the entire kingdom, it turns out I've just got a full plate right now, and I'm too busy to do the job that you assigned me to do. I mean, maybe people did write that to this king and queen, but I don't really see evidence of that, and it seems a little bit surprising. But I will say something just generally speaking. It is surprising to me how much we see in this documentation of people in this kingdom just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I know that there's always criminals, right? There's always going to be people who broke the law, did some murder, that kind of thing, and they have to be caught and apprehended. Like pirates. Okay, so we talked about pirates yesterday. But what about the people who just are like dragging their feet? Like, they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I feel like there's been a great many documents, especially at the outset of the reign, where people are just like, maybe they're used to just not being checked up on. Like, maybe, Pere the Ceremonious, for the last couple years of his reign, he was just kind of phoning it in. And so all these officials and all these knights and all these people that, usually, I guess with a monarch who checks up on them, they would do a better job. They've just gotten used to kind of not taking the monarch all that seriously, maybe. Or maybe Pere the Ceremonious always inspired people to do what they're supposed to be doing. And now that we've got a new king and queen on the throne, people are like, yes, now we can relax. And maybe it's because of Joanne being sickly. Maybe they know. Maybe word got around. I'm not sure. All of these possibilities are in play because we're just not getting enough information from the documents just yet, and we might never know. And so, what we'll figure out is maybe with some additional reading of articles by other historians. That said, I've already read a lot of articles by other historians. I just really want to figure out whether I can say that there was a difference between how people behaved in the last 2 years of the reign of Per the Ceremonious versus what I'm seeing in this first year of Joanne and Violant. Maybe what I would have to do is go back into some of the registers and from Per the Ceremonious and see how often he's scolding people for not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right. So again, we have to kind of expand the scope in order sometimes to figure out some better inferences. All right. Let's bring it back in to this letter itself. Let's go very micro for a moment because I want to point out just a couple things about just some fun little tidbits for this letter. First of all, we've got 2 moments where we have on folio 99R superscription. So interestingly, on the first line, it seems to me like the scribe has unnecessarily repeated like the same word up above. So we've got pergam, que prestamon, and then above it almost looks like it could be the same word. We've got a per, P-E-R. So I can't quite figure out what's going on there. Why there is a second word that begins with the letter P written above, and it's very difficult to make out. So I should actually address the end of the line, which is actually an abbreviation, I think. And I was pretty proud of myself for this one because it doesn't appear too often, but I think I can be quite sure of what this expands to. On the line itself, we have the letter C and the letter A. And then above it, we have what looks kind of like a U or maybe a V. And so it would then have C-U-A as the letters that we can see. And then I believe that this would expand to cura. So I think if we've got that, and there's a little bit of a upward diagonal stroke off of that U, so that I think that could be a mark to indicate an R. So I think we've got cura. And so the word that comes before it, I looked up because I was sort of thinking like, okay, that's like the cognate for sovereign in English, soberana. And so I looked that up, and it turns out that we can say that translates to utmost. So utmost care, with the utmost care. All right, and then right below that on the second line of folio 99R, we have a fun superscription. The reason why this is so fun is because the word that has been written in superscript is desus, which I think in this situation actually literally translates to like above. So, but the meaning is basically, okay, com is the third to last word, and then we have se, and then we have contra. So basically what's being said here is as against above, but basically the sense of it is in the larger phrasing saying so starting from the beginning of the sentence, which has a capital E. So, and if we don't believe for our service that you are above all of your other work. So basically this is a sentence I would really like to get some help with in the seminar I'm going to take in August on reading medieval Catalan, because I can't quite translate it all piece by piece, but the overall sense is if we don't believe that you are interested in serving us above all of your other work, then, and then that phrase that I talked about a little bit earlier, then, we're going to find somebody else to do this. So what's really fun is that the word desus is what got superscribed there. And so we have sort of like the meaning of the word is being realized in the placement of the word on the paper. Get it? Hopefully I explained that in a way that made sense. Okay, one last thing to talk about with this letter, the probata statement. I feel like I understand all of the probata statement. There seems to be like a word missing, but okay, we'll get to that. So the first line of the probata is the name of the person who is copying this into the register. That would be Andre Gravelli. And then we have an MA with a macron. So something like Mondawit. And then we have Domine Regina. So I don't know why we don't have a Mondawit mihi. So we basically just have the Queen commanded. But then I think I have the answer to this. So the next line begins with factum per. And we don't have the pro for provisione. But what we have is something like the royal. We have REG. And then we have the word for treasurer. There's been damage to the paper, so we don't have the end of what comes after treasurer. But I think that it's like the full spelling of treasurer and then maybe something else afterwards. But the whole sense of this is that he has, Andre Gravelli, he's been commanded by the treasurer of the Queen. So I think we have a situation where perhaps Violant was not directly involved in this, but I would say that this sounds like her. This, when she is saying that she is astonished at the beginning, I would be surprised if that kind of language was used, and then talking about, the weakness, flacamant. So I did a search in the OpenClaw pipeline registers for that word. It does not appear very frequently, at least to the extent that the agentic AI was able to correctly transcribe it. So I think this is Violant. I think maybe she was working with the treasurer. They together had been the ones that originated this document. And then we have at the end, after the year, on the very last line of the text block of the letter, we've got De Ponte, which is the name of, I think, the maybe vice chancellor or chancellor for the queen. So still kind of shaky. Can't really say I'm 100% sure about interpreting the probata information, but we're making progress. So I'll be interested to see if Berengario Dolms comes up again in this register. And I did do a search. It seems like he does not. But, we'll just keep an eye out, because I searched the, inferior level of transcription that I got from OpenClaw, working with Claude on this register. So it just might be that Berengario Dolms does come up again in the register, but the name just got mangled by the AI. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if he gets some praise after getting this scolding. I would like to think that we'll be able to find that, but we'll see. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Compagnona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I've done my job. Remember, the motto of the Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, including a link back to the February 26th episode. And listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violant de Bar. In the meantime, take care.